moment, Your Honor. Could you please state your full name for the record?
Sure. My name is Christian, spelled Kristijan. My last name is Courtroom, Kourun.
Are you employed?
I am.
By whom?
The city of Eastlake.
How long have you worked for the city of Eastlake?
I've been there about 13 years now.
What is your position?
I'm a detective.
Have you always been a detective there?
I was not. I started off as a patrolman and then became a detective.
How long were you a patrolman?
I was a patrolman, I'm going to guesstimate about 8 years.
Did you complete any training for your initial position with EPD?
The Ohio Peace Officers Training Academy.
How long did that last?
It's about a 6-month course.
Did that entail any training as to drug investigations?
Brief. It's a basic academy, so it gives you a brief crossover of narcotics.
Did you learn about drug slang and
I did.
controlled substances?
I did.
And are you a certified police officer in the state of Ohio?
I am. Both corrections and police.
Have you been one since you started at Eastlake Police Department?
Yes.
In your job, do you ever collaborate with other police agencies?
Often.
Have you ever collaborated with Lake County Narcotics Agency?
Yeah, on a number of occasions.
On those occasions, have you ever assisted them with a controlled buy during your duties as
Yes.
an officer? How have you assisted them?
A variety of ways you can help on surveillance, sometimes intel gathering and monitoring a residence or vehicles from a residence, arrest, searches of individuals, among other things.
Have you ever worked with a confidential informant during an investigation?
Yes.
And why would you work with a confidential informant generally?
I'm one of the narcotics detectives in Eastlake, so I often begin narcotics investigations, and if they get a little larger than I can expect, I usually ask for the help from the narcotics agency.
Specifically, have you ever worked with a confidential informant named Thomas Sutton?
Yes.
When did you first meet Mr. Sutton?
Well, we did a search warrant. Well, the first time I met him, we had, and the year, it's going to slip my mind, but we had an inmate death in our jail on an overdose. And I wanted to speak to the inmate's father, and the inmate's father was living with Thomas Sutton on Forest Drive.
Did you ever meet him at any previous jobs before being the EPD police officer?
Mr. Sutton, no.
And why was Mr. Sutton willing to be a confidential informant?
We conduct a search.
Hold on.
Okay.
I'll overrule it. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
We conduct a search warrant at Mr. Sutton's home from a complaint of drug activity. And from that, we located some minor evidence items, some felony 5-level things, and he was willing to work off his charge.
Did you have any written agreement with him as to any potential benefit he might receive for cooperating?
I did not have a written agreement, no.
Did he receive any benefit for his cooperation with the Lake County Narcotics Agency?
Aside from the charges that were pending, as long as he cooperated with the narcotics agency and did a buy, then the charges would not be filed.
In response to him cooperating, did you decide not to file charges against him?
Correct.
Turning to June 17, 2022, were you working on that date?
I was?
Were you involved in any Lake County Narcotics Agency investigations on the date?
Yes.
What kind of an investigation were you involved with?
Mr. Sutton wanted to do a controlled buy on that day, so we called in with the Lake County Narcotics, and they brought him to the station.
And
I know they do their normal paperwork. They briefed him, and then they were going to set up for a controlled buy.
And how were you involved specifically?
I was going to act as the liaison officer basically between our patrol and Lake County Narcotics. I was gonna assist them with, if I could, with surveillance. I know they had quite a number of guys in the area at the time, and any other way they needed me to.
I'm putting up, if I could please have the screen, what's been previously admitted States Exhibit 2B. Do you recognize this map, recognize the geographic area?
I do.
Can you see on this map where you were physically located at when the controlled buy investigation was taking place?
You cannot.
What about on States 2A, even wider out version map?
Yes.
Can you use the mouse in front of you, the cursor, to point out where you were? The McDonald's on Lakeshore Boulevard is...
The middle school is here. I began at the middle school in the driveway, but they had a number of agents in the area, so I remember moving from the middle school, not wanting to overcrowd the area with unmarked vehicles. And I moved down to what's Bruce E. Park.
Were you in an unmarked vehicle?
I was.
Were you with anyone else?
I was not.
And during that day, did you see anything of note?
From after the control purchase, or what I believe was control purchase happened,
Yes.
the call came out that the purchase was completed and a vehicle, a tan, I can't remember if they called it a tan or pewter, what the color was. It was a Toyota, and it was heading, I remember they said it was heading west on Lakeshore Boulevard.
Did you ever see that vehicle?
I did.
When did you see it?
When I heard that the purchase was completed, I moved up from Jackson Park to Lakeshore Boulevard. There is directly across is Reeves Road. There's a boat club there, a yacht club. I pulled into the yacht club, did kind of a U-turn, and waited for the Avalon to pass.
Could you see if there was anyone in the vehicle?
I assume there was a driver. I could not tell for sure. The windows were tinted.
Could you see how many occupants were in the vehicle?
I could not.
And did you happen to see the license plate?
I did not. The license plate was obscured by a dark, like a cover, like a shaded cover.
Did you see which direction the vehicle was traveling?
The vehicle was traveling westbound on Lakeshore toward, I guess it would be toward 91, toward the police station.
Could you indicate on States 2A where approximately you saw the vehicle first and then where you saw it traveling towards?
This area would be where I first see it, which is going to be, Reeves Road area and Lakeshore Boulevard. The boat club is on the north side of Lakeshore Boulevard. This is where I first saw the vehicle. I'm going to approximate there. I can't really see where Reeves Road is listed, but I'm going to approximate around there.
Is Reeves Road to the right of the fork and knife image in States 2A?
Is that going to be Trader? It would be to the right, or I'm to the east. The fork and knife here? Yes, I see what you're saying. Yes, it is to the right of that.
And did you follow the vehicle?
I did.
You ever lose eyes on it?
For a brief period after Officers Eden and Frank were behind the vehicle, I was caught by a traffic light.
Can you indicate on this map, did you lose eyes on it on Lakeshore Boulevard?
I did.
Could you indicate on the map roughly where you no longer could see?
I got stopped at the red light at Lakeshore, Lakeshore and State Route 91.
So the intersection of 283 and 91 to the south of the city of Timberlake in States 2A?
Correct.
And you said other officers were following it?
Yes,
The vehicle, were they in marked units?
they were marked units.
Did you ever see the vehicle again?
I did.
Where did you see the vehicle at?
When I received the green light and when I can go through this intersection safely, I drove to the Dollar General. I'd like to say,
I'm going to put up a better map for you. I'm going to put up States Exhibit 5B. Oh, sorry, that is the wrong one.
6B.
Is this the area you're referencing where you saw the vehicle again?
Correct, across from Timberlake, Minnewawa Drive is there, yes, that's the Dollar General.
And could you indicate where on State 6B you saw the vehicle again at?
It was in this area on the side of Dollar General.
Okay, so west of the red balloon that says Dollar General.
Correct.
Store Parking lot. And did you pull up right up to the scene in your unmarked vehicle?
I did not.
Why not?
I was in an unmarked vehicle. I didn't want to cause alarm, or I didn't know how they were going to approach the traffic stop. I wasn't sure if they were going to immediately mention that they had the intel that a drug trafficking or a transaction went down, or if they were going to use what I gave them as window tint and a rear license plate cover as probable cause. So I looped around Lake Shore here, and there's another opening to the plaza. And I drove along the plaza here and stopped over by this. There's a separation here. It's a low divider. It's like a grass median, and I parked there.
To the north of the Tex Nick's Family Restaurant.
Yeah, slightly to the northeast. Yep.
And did you observe any other police officers already being there?
Officer Eden, Officer Frank, Detective Fawcett now, and Officer Neath.
What kind of officer is Officer Neath?
He's a canine officer?
Did you see his canine dog at all at the scene?
Yes.
Could you tell who got pulled over from where you were?
I could tell that it was the tan-colored Toyota with the tinted windows and the license plate cover.
And what did you observe next from where you were?
When I pulled up to the scene, driver and passenger were already out of the vehicle. Both the doors were open to the vehicle, and I can recall seeing Sergeant Frank over at the passenger side at some point. Took some photographs, recovered some items. I was just waiting. They put some stuff in the back of the vehicle. They transported both Mrs. Bandy and Mr. Nix to the police station.
Did you recognize immediately any of the people that were in the Toyota?
I recognized Mr. Nix.
How did you recognize him?
Objection.
Overruled.
From a previous employment.
What previous employment was that?
I was a
Objection.
Overruled.
I was a corrections officer at the Cuyahoga County Sheriff's Office, and Mr. Nix was an inmate in the pod.
Did you ever speak to Mr. Nix in the duties of your employment as a corrections officer?
Yes, just about every shift.
How many shifts a week would you work?
12-hour shifts, so 7 out of 14 days. He was in pod 5 Charlie on a regular, I would say regular workday basis. He's one of the ones I'd talk to a little more regularly.
Approximately how long did you work there while he was also there and you spoke to him?
Continued objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
I'm going to guesstimate 6 months to a year. I can't recall how long. I know we bid on the pods every 6 months. I know I had that pod for a year. I can't recall if Mr. there the entire time of that.
Are you familiar with how his voice sounds?
I am.
Turning back to the scene of the traffic stop, did you ever get closer to the traffic stop?
Yes,
Did you collect any evidence?
I did not.
Did you speak to the defendant or the driver of the scene at all?
I did not.
And later on, did you have any later involvement in the investigation?
I did.
Did you do any evidence processing work?
I did.
What evidence did you process?
Sergeant Frank had items that were from the traffic stop secured in his, it's basically a lockbox in the back of the truck or the SUV. He brought those items in to the police department in the patrolman's room. We have a desk that's kind of set off to the side that's used usually for evidence collection, securing it, photographing it. We brought those items in, and I photographed a number of the items there. and I made a phone call to a cell phone that was there, and I recorded some money that was collected.
Are the cell phones and the money, the items Officer Frank brought in?
They are
And can you remember what kind of cell phone that you called?
a flip phone. I would call it a flip phone.
And you said you counted the money.
I did.
How much money was it in total?
$224, if I'm not mistaken,
And this is taking place at the East Lake Police Department.
at the police department.
Were you able to determine whether any of the seized money were marked LCNA funds?
I was. At the time we were at the station, the narcotics agents were as well. I wanted to get a copy of, or at least a note of the serial numbers so that I can see if the money was in that, contained inside the ones that we found, and I removed all the ones that I saw had the same serial numbers that they were looking for.
After you remove those items you believe to, or 20s or dollar bills that you thought were marked, did you take a photo of them?
I did.
Showing Defense Counsel States Exhibit 9A, 9B.
Your Honor, just again for protection of the record, same objection that I've been making to any results of the search.
Okay, overruled.
Now handing you States Exhibit 9B. Did you look at those?
Yes.
How do you recognize it?
I took the two photographs.
What's 9A a photo of?
9A is a photo of the overall of the money. And then the two cell phones, the cell phone that's up top underneath the $5 bill is actually a detective cell phone. So the two cell phones that are to the bottom of the page, I would say the flip phone and the one below it, and all the money there is what I took a photograph of.
And could you tell what type of cell phones you were dealing with besides detective cell phone?
Could you be more specific?
Did you know, could you recognize or identify the brand of the smaller black cell phone?
Alcatel is on there. I don't know if it was a specific type of Alcatel.
Okay, so it says Alcatel on it.
Yeah, I believe that's how it's pronounced.
And do those photos fairly and accurately reflect the seized money and cell phones given to you by Sergeant Frank?
They do.
And that's, the state would like to admit, State's Exhibit 9A.
All right, I'll admit them over the objection of the defendant.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm going to put 9A up on the screen. And again, generally, what are we looking at here in State's Exhibit 9A?
The cash that was brought in by Sergeant Frank and two cell phones. And then the cell phone, I guess, to the far right that has the light gray, dark gray with the lime green is a detective cell phone.
Are all of these bills that we're seeing marked Lake County Narcotics Agency funds?
They were not,
Are some of them?
some of them.
And which cell phone in this picture, you said the one under the $5 bill was a detective cell phone?
Correct, it's an iPhone.
In the middle one is an Alcatel phone, or at least has Alcatel marking on it.
Flip phone.
I'm now going to State's Exhibit 9B. Why did you take this photo?
After I learned of the serial numbers that were on the marked bills that the narcotics agency used, I pulled those aside so that you could see the serial numbers and then photographed them.
Would you mind please reading off the serial number of the $20 bill at the very top of State's 9B?
Objection,
Sure.
Your Honor. The document speaks for itself.
Overruled.
NG 07330953B.
And the $20 bill, second from the top?
ND, D as in David, 69654355B.
Third from the top?
MF, F as in Frank, 9344 2496D.
Fourth from the top.
PG 254-90873A.
And lastly, the serial number of the $20 bill at the very bottom of the state sign deed.
Is PG 560-36713C.
Earlier, you testified that you did some investigation or evidence processing by calling the Alcatel cell phone number. What number did you call?
I call the number that one of the narcotics agents, SA 91, I believe is the number, provided me.
Objection.
Overruled.
Can you remember what number that was?
I cannot remember the number.
Will it be contained in the photos you took later, eventually?
Yes.
And why did you do that? Why did you call the cell phone?
I always like to see if the number that the confidential informant calls is actually on or in the evidence that was collected from the scene.
Did you memorialize or log your findings in any way as to calling the number?
I took a video of the call.
Showing defense counsel states exhibit 10, call to defendant's phone. And you states exhibit 10, I'm taking back 98 CD. You recognize that CD?
I do.
How do you recognize it?
I initialed it and watched it. It's a it says it's the call to the defendant's phone. It's a little video of that of what I took.
You previously watched and confirmed that this is accurate?
I did. I initialed it.
And not to belabor the point, but is this fair and accurate or substantially the same thing that happened that when you called the cell phone?
It is.
Say we'd move to admit State Exhibit 10.
Objection, Your Honor. The basis for the objection is that that phone number has already been established to have been provided by the CI, who is not here to testify. The provision of the phone number to SA 91 would be hearsay. The provision of the phone number from SA 91 to Detective Courtroom would also be hearsay. Those are both out-of-court statements being asserted for the truth of the matter asserted, i.e. that that was the phone number that my client was using and that that was the phone number that the call was made in order to set up the alleged buy bust.
Well, the exercise that he's about to engage in, I presume, is that calling a number to see if it matches up with the C's phone, so it's overruled.
States
And
now,
And it's admitted.
thank you, Your Honor. States now going to play States Exhibit 10. Could you describe the video we just saw?
I had my detective phone. I dialed the 241-3338 number, 440. I hit the send button, and then the flip phone, the Alcatel phone, rang.
And the person's hand we saw in the video, whose hand was that?
That would be my hand.
And you earlier mentioned that you also took photos of the Alcatel phone, or at least the phone with the name Alcatel on it.
I did.
Did you take those photos after you made the test call we just watched?
I took photos of some calls that were made from the phone, and I took photos afterwards as well.
And can you remember what you took photos of?
I know when you open the flip phone, on the screen were two calls After I made the call, they were, it said Tom, or just before I made the call, when I opened the flip phone, Tom was on there with, I believe, a number 2 next to it.
I'm showing defense counsel's been previously marked as State's Exhibit 11A to B. Do you recognize those photos?
I do.
And did you, how do you recognize them?
Those are the photos that I took.
And what is State's Exhibit 11A generally showing in that photograph?
11A is, it says call information. It shows how many calls were made to Tom.
What about 11B?
11B is the call log, 2 phone calls to Tom.
Do these fairly and accurately reflect the call information you saw on June 17, 2022, listed in the Alcatel cell phone?
They do.
State would move to admit State's Exhibits.
There were 2 cell phones up there. You keep talking about an Alcatel. What's the Alcatel?
The Alcatel cell phone is the phone seized from the defendant.
Okay, there were 2 phones up there, though. The last picture you showed, there were 2 phones up there. Where's the flip phone? I keep hearing about a flip phone.
Like the physical flip phone or a photo?
Detective Karoun said flip phone a couple times. Where's it? I haven't seen a flip phone up there of any of these phones yet.
Okay. Which one's
Play the video again. It's I pull up 10.
Okay.
Have them describe which one.
Which one's the Alcatel?
To the left there, Your Honor.
Is that a flip phone?
It is.
Okay, and what's the other phone?
The other phone is an iPhone. That's our detective phone.
And so the phone that was ringing was what?
There's going to be the flip phone. The one to the left will start ringing. That would be the flip phone, the Alcatel.
I'm resuming safety at the time.
All right, so turn that off. Let me see those exhibits. Is this the flip phone that is this 11A and 11B the flip phone?
Correct.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you want those admitted? Is that your motion?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Crook?
Objection not only for being the results of a search that we still believe is unconstitutional, but also objection as far as the identification of, yes, it does show from someone named Tom, but the relevance has not even been established yet as far as the phone number it came from, whether that person's, again, we've got a bunch of issues that question on relevance in general.
I mean, what's the relevance of Tom showing up in the defendant's flip
Those
phone?
demonstrate that the phone that the defendant had on his person had call logs from Tom, who was the CI, and they line
Okay,
up
well,
with the
Thomas
Sutton.
Okay, where's Sutton indicated? I mean, I don't know who, Tom is like a pretty common name, right? So am I to presume, do you want me to presume by virtue of this exhibit, these exhibits, that Tom that shows up in here were phone calls to Tom Sutton or from Tom Sutton, presumption?
That the Alcatel cell phone had Tom as a contact in it.
Right, I
and
understand that. So do you want me to presume that that's Tom Sutton? Is that what you're asking to do by this exhibit?
Yes, Your Honor, that'd be a reasonable inference.
Okay, I'm not gonna admit those.
One moment, Your Honor. Did you ever look at the actual number that was listed under the contact information of Tom?
I did not.
Were you involved at all in the booking of the defendant?
Yes.
Was that on June 17, 2022?
Yes.
Were you present while he was being booked?
Yes.
And Where was he being booked at?
He was in our jail, and when I first came into the jail from our main hallway, he was in the, what we call the video room. SA, Special Agent 91 was having a conversation with him, interviewing him potentially in that smaller room, that video room,
And our jail is the East Lake Jail.
the East Lake Jail.
Could you overhear the conversations the defendant was having with Special Agent 91?
From walking through, I could hear a bit of it.
Did you overhear the defendant making statements to any other police officers?
Yes.
To who? What police officer?
He made statements to me, made statements to Patrolman Eden while I was in the room. I don't know if he was talking to generally both of us or just to me or Patrolman Eden.
What about any statements he made to Detective Fawcett?
Yes.
And what statements did you overhear him making to Detective Fawcett?
That he's willing to accept the responsibility of anything that was located in the vehicle.
Showing defense counsel, it's been warranted State's Exhibit 12, looking video clip. That back. Do you recognize that this State's Exhibit 12?
I do.
How do you recognize it?
It's a booking video clip from our jail. I did initial it, so
What does you initialing it mean?
that I watched it and agreed that what was there was accurate to what was seen in the jail.
And what you actually
Heard.
Confidential.
And where did this surveillance video footage come from?
Our jail, our booking room. It's a western-facing camera.
They would move to admit State's Exhibit 13 in the evidence, Your Honor.
Same objection as everything else. It was a result of the search and illegal seizure of my client, Your Honor.
All right, overruled, it's admitted.
Thank you. I'm now going to play State's Exhibit 12.
You saw that my girl go, man?
Before I do, I'm pausing it at 1. Do you know who this person is in the red pants near the top of the video?
Yeah, that's Mr. Nix.
What about the officer standing in the top right?
It's Patrolman Eden,
What about this female officer near the bottom?
and that's Detective Fawcett.
Okay, I'm now going to play it from the beginning again. It's only 18 seconds long.
That my girl go, man?
So she is in interview room 1. She's gonna talk.
I'm saying she gonna leave, cause it's nothing, everything your father's mine.
Okay.
I'm taking full responsibility, you go on my side, my person.
Okay, we'll talk about it in just a minute, okay? Let me go get your paperwork and then we'll have a chit chat, okay?
All right, let me just finish playing State's Exhibit 12. Where were you in the frame of that? Were you in the frame of that video?
I was not.
Where were you physically, like, if you had to describe in relation to the perspective?
I would describe it as about 10 to 15 feet. She's walking toward the door that I was in, waiting for her to come out.
So you're kind of underneath the camera in another room?
Correct. The video, just outside the video room on the other side. I call it the females hallway. We refer to it as the females hallway.
Do you recognize anyone in court as the person that made those statements to Detective Fawcett?
I do.
And what is he wearing?
Short sleeve, looks like a dark blue, I believe it's a jumpsuit with a yellow wristband.
Record reflect the detective identified the defendant.
Yeah,
Did you yourself later interview the defendant?
I came in to speak to them a little bit and try to see what else they needed from the booking process.
And did that interview take place in the same location you described before?
It did in the jail, the booking area.
Did you record that interview?
It's automatically recorded.
Did you try to obtain that recording later?
Yeah, one of us, I'm sure, submitted a download request and it was downloaded and saved.
Were you able to review it?
I was.
There was no technical malfunction of the recording?
Of the booking room area, there was not. Of the video room area, we've had complications in that room for quite a while.
Wait a minute. Are you asking him about something other than 12?
Yes, you're on his interview. He interviewed him under it, and there was an issue with the recording.
Okay, but he said that it was recorded.
I know, Your Honor, but I think he meant the booking successfully got recorded, but not his actual interview.
Your Honor, that was not his testimony.
You can overhear a portion of the interview on the booking. So it is audio recorded on the booking. There wasn't just an independent recording of the interview room.
Okay, the interview room must be adjacent to the booking room?
It
That
is,
is correct.
Okay, so let's start again with the interview in the interview room, okay? Questioning, go ahead.
As for your interview of the defendant after he was booked, were you able to obtain a recording from the camera in the interview room?
correct.
You were.
Yes, there was a short portion that was recorded while we were in the video room is what you're referring to, as we're walking into the booking area.
Was that recording saved as a booking video from the booking room?
It was.
Is the recording you're referring to the correct camera in the same room you interviewed him in?
It's not.
Okay, the different one that just happened to overhear the room you're in?
Correct, because the camera's in such close proximity to the video room, you can hear the conversations that are normally going on in that video room.
And how long have you known the defendant? In years, would you say?
That was, I worked in the jail 2004-ish, 4, 5. I wouldn't say I know him the entire time, but I knew him when I was in the jail, and then I know we his name came up in some other investigation, or I shouldn't say investigation, in some other incidents that were attained in East Lake.
Objection.
Sustained.
Did the defendant recognize you
Yes,
when you met him at the jail?
yes.
And earlier you mentioned that,
Well, wait. How does he know the defendant recognized him?
how do you know the defendant recognized you?
We had conversations about our time back in 2004 when I was a corrections officer in the jail and he was an inmate.
And roughly what was that conversation about?
I remember asking him how long he's been, we spoke about, I recall that, back in 2004 or early 2000s, his family owned a grocery store of some sort, down in like the 140th area. So I brought that up for a little bit. He brought up a name of an inmate that was in the same pod with him, and it kind of sparked some memories for me. And so we just had some general conversation about, I guess, back in the day, you would say.
Showing defense counsel some more to State's Exhibit 1A.
What exhibit is it?
1A, Your Honor. You look at State's Exhibit 1A.
Okay.
Do you recognize that disc?
Audio files. I'm assuming it's from our jail, looks like.
Can you recognize it?
It's a State versus Andrew Nix. It was signed off by 91. It says audio files.
Have you previously ever listened to a recorded phone call between SA 91
I have?
and Thomas Sutton,
Yes.
as well as an unknown man?
Yes,
And you listened to that?
I did.
And could you recognize who the person who received the call's voice was?
Yes.
And who was the person who received the call's voice?
Objection, Your Honor. He was not a party to the phone call. Every statement on there by anyone that he didn't witness is by definition hearsay. And if the state is asking the court
Well,
to
he's
accept.
not, Mr. Hurd is not asking him to testify as to the truth of what's in the phone call. He's asking him as to whether, from his previous encounters with Mr. Nix, he recognizes that voice, the voice to be that of Mr. Nix. That's what he's asking, right?
Your Honor, he's asking the court to accept as evidence the phone call and to identify my client as a party to said phone call
Not the
based
phone,
on,
not the phone call. He's asking me to accept as true the fact that Detective Caroon can say that that was Mr. Nix on that phone call, not whether what he said was true or not true, just that it was him based on his previous encounter. I mean, doesn't that go to, isn't that a weight issue of whether I'm supposed
well,
to
there's,
accept beyond a reasonable doubt that the voice on that phone call is Mr. Nix by virtue of Detective Caroon's encounters with him 20 years ago, right?
that was going to be the second part of my objection, Your Honor, is that I don't believe they've laid a sufficient foundation to allow him to authenticate a voice that he hadn't heard in 20 years
Well-
retroactively is,
But that's a weight issue, right? I mean, that's not an admissibility, that's a weight issue.
Your Honor, I
What?
just point out, I also on direct handed that disc to Special Agent 91. and-
I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that. Okay, but that's a different issue. Okay? The issue is whether Detective Caroon can identify that voice on that phone call with being Mr. Nix based on the time they spent together, so to speak, in 2004 and 2005. That's the issue, right?
Yes, Your Honor, I want them to,
So that's the reason
yes.
for that testimony, and that's a weight issue and not an admissibility issue. So I'll overrule it. You can go ahead and answer.
I've moved to Mid-States Exhibit 1A, Your Honor.
Well, let's hear what he has to say before I admit anything. Okay, he listened to it, right?
Yes.
Okay? And you can ask him about it. I'm not gonna, he already listened to it. We don't need to admit it for him to testify. So I'll decide whether it gets admitted after I hear his testimony.
When you listen to that phone call, can you describe what you heard?
Well, I'm not gonna let him talk about the conversation
Okay.
itself. I don't care about the conversation, okay?
Can you identify the voice of the person receiving the phone?
Yes,
How can you identify it?
based on past times that I've spoken to and known Mr. Nix, I can identify that voice as Mr. Nix.
How many separate conversations would you estimate you've had with Andrew Nix?
7 days.
Are you talking about in the 2004, 2005 timeframe?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Back when I was a corrections officer, I'm gonna say thousands. That's a hard, how many days, he could have bored or anything like that, or in the gym. I'm gonna go with it being 1,000 times. And then a few times, and he's like,
And those few times were the date he was arrested, you spoke to him again?
and before.
objection.
Overruled.
I move to admit State's Exhibit 1A, Your Honor.
All right, I'll admit it over the defense objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Well, it's already admitted, isn't it? Didn't we admit it before?
No.
1B was admitted.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
I'm going to play State's Exhibit 1A.
Friday, June 17, 2022, time 14 hours, SA 91, Detective Monk, CI 1365. Phone is going to be a controlled call to Dre, phone number 440-241-3338, to discuss the purchase of $100 of crack cocaine for controlled by number 1 in East Lake, Lake County.
Hello. Dre, you busy? No, what's up? I need $1. You need me over at McDonald's? You need what? $1. All right, here I come. Yeah, I'll call you in a minute. All right, but how long? Yeah, that no number 15, 20 minutes, right? Not even that. Okay, I'll see you in a little bit. Yeah.
State's Exhibit 1A in its entirety. Again, did you recognize whose voice was that received that call?
I did.
And through your training experience, do you understand what need $1 means?
I do.
What does that mean?
It's street slang for a gram.
And a gram of cocaine?
Typically.
And how how much usually does a gram of cocaine cost?
I couldn't answer that accurately.
Are you aware of the defendant having
Drew, they called him that, you know, in the corrections days, Nix,
Did he ever go by Dre?
not that I recall.
No further
No,
questions.
no, no,
Oh,
no, no,
sorry,
no.
Your Honor. Sorry, Your Honor.
All right, if we could just have a moment, Your Honor. Thank you. This is the prior case.
Were you ever involved in any investigations that Thomas Sutton was involved in April 2022?
Are you referring to the search warrant?
Yes.
Yes.
Did you write any police reports or supplemental reports as to that investigation?
I did.
And would the police report that you wrote or contributed to supplemental report refresh your recollection as to Thomas Sutton's number?
Absolutely.
Your Honor, I'm going to object.
Sustain.
One moment. From your prior dealings with Thomas Sutton in April 2022, would you have documented any phone number they gave you?
Objection. Hearsay.
Overruled.
Yes.
And as you sit here today, you have the opportunity to read, review the police report that you wrote and look at the phone number of Thomas Sutton. Would that assist you in refreshing your recollection as to his number?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustain.
Did you previously know Thomas Sutton's number, phone number?
Objection. He's already testified he doesn't know it.
Overruled. What, you going to answer?
Did you previously know Thomas Sutton's phone number
Yes.
and you wrote it down?
Yes.
And the document which you wrote it down in, would that represent the number you previously knew?
Yes.
Objection.
overruled as to the process of refreshing the recollection, but wait a minute, I'm not done yet. What's the, before I let him refresh his recollection, what's the relevance of Thomas Sutton's phone number at this point?
It matches the phone number in States Exhibits 11A through B that the contact Tom is listed next to.
Okay, what 11A and 11B are not admitted.
Yes, Your Honor, this is an effort to try to show why these exhibits are relevant and connect Tom with the correct number that he had in April 2022. This happened 2 months later in June 2022.
All right, go ahead and hand him the document that you believe will help him refresh his recollection.
If I may, the detective has already testified that he was provided the number that he called it from his own phone. It was provided by a third party.
Provided in June
Correct.
22. Now, this question goes, the nature of this question is an investigation regarding the search warrant of April in 22, and whether, I presume that somewhere the answer is going to be that Detective Caroon wrote down the number of Sutton when they searched his house, and that's in there. Okay.
And Your
So
Honor,
that's separate and apart from June of
if that
22.
number was provided to Detective Caroon by Mr. Sutton, then that's still hearsay.
Okay, no, not in that instance, it's not. Okay, so go ahead.
Just review this document silently. Look up once you have an opportunity to look at it.
Okay.
Is your recollection refreshed as to what Thomas Sutton's number was in April 2022?
It is
What was it?
796-7143,
And what
440 area code.
440 area code?
Correct.
I'm gonna hand you again just 11A through 11B. What number is listed under the contact Tom in States 11A?
Objection, Your Honor.
Overruled.
440-796-714. Correction, it's 1-440-796-7143.
And that's the same number that Thomas Sutton gave you in April 2022?
Correct.
So we would admit States Exhibits 11A through B.
Objection, Your Honor.
All right,
This is a complete
overruled,
bootstrap.
they're admitted. I mean, Mr. Crook, look, you make your record, okay, you don't have to, the record's not gonna, it's not gonna show up that you're shaking your head every time a ruling doesn't go your way, so stop shaking your head, okay?
Fair enough, Your Honor.
All right?
Putting up on the screen, States Exhibit 11A. Could you describe what we're looking at here?
Objection, Your Honor. Asked and answered. He already covered all of that.
No. It's admitted, so testify as to the admitted exhibit. You can answer the question.
It's
What?
the
Go ahead.
it's the call log from the Alcatel flip phone, and it has Tom at 12:41 p.m. with the number 2, signifying 2 phone calls made around that time.
Would that mean that both phone calls were made at 12:41 p.m. or the second one?
I believe the old flip phones go by the later call is documented. You have to open up that when the first one was documented.
And is this a call received, not an outgoing call?
Correct. Arrow into the phone, meaning received.
And now we're gonna look at 11B. Oh, sorry. So sorry. And are these the 2 calls that you were referencing earlier in 11A?
Correct.
And what was the duration of the second call?
9 seconds.
12:41.
9 seconds.
What about the duration of the first call, 12:16 p.m.?
25 seconds.
Is this consistent with the buy bus operation on June 17th, 2022, the timing?
Objection, foundation.
It is.
And you also mentioned earlier,
I'm gonna take this down, that you did,
Do you have 11A and 11B sitting there?
I do not, sir.
Let me see 11A and 11B. Okay, go ahead.
we discussed the statements you overheard the defendant say to Breonna Fawcett. Did you overhear, or excuse me, during your interview with him, did he make any statements as to any of the drugs that were found?
You're referring to the time in the booking room?
Yeah,
He did. He claimed he'd take all responsibility for anything that was located in the car. I recall him saying that it was on the passenger side.
Are you talking about the booking video we saw before?
no, this is not on.
All right, I don't know what you're talking about, okay? You referenced the booking room, and I saw him say something, meaning Mr. Nix, to Detective Fawcett in the booking room. So if I don't start getting some clarity about who said what and where they said it, who overheard what, then I'm not gonna listen to it, okay?
Yes, Your Honor. So the first conversation with Breonna Fawcett you just overheard. And then you.
What conversation with Fawcett?
The one,
State's Exhibit 10,
Okay,
that clip,
okay.
and then you interviewed the defendant again.
Spoke to him in the booking room?
Yes.
excuse me, it was State's Exhibit 12 was the Breonna Fawcett, clip that we played.
Yes.
And then we haven't seen any recording of this other conversation when you interviewed the defendant.
We have not yet, no.
When you interviewed the defendant, did he make any other statements to you about any of the found drugs?
He did.
What did he say?
When was this interview? When was this interview?
Approximately how long after was the interview that you did with the defendant after that clip we saw where he's talking to Breonna Fawcett?
I'm approximate 20 minutes. By the time the booking process was complete, I came in to see if they needed anything additionally, any assistance with Mr. Nix. And I walked into the booking room and he was seated on a bench and we were having a conversation.
And this is the same day that he was arrested and the
Correct.
alibi happened?
Shortly after his booking process.
And what statements did he make?
All right, now see, I still don't know where this takes place because I've heard there was an interview room adjacent to the booking room where there was no film, but the voice was overheard in the booking room. Now he's saying it was in the booking room where the interview took place. I don't know, I don't have the slightest idea. If my life depended on it, I couldn't tell you where the interview took place.
Okay. I apologize for that.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw what Mr. Nix said to Detective Fawcett. Courtroom said he was standing in the doorway threshold of an adjacent room and heard that, okay? Right?
Yes.
Okay,
What room would you call this?
the booking room. That's the booking room. I know that, right?
And what room did you interview the defendant?
I spoke to him in the what we call the video room. Special Agent 91 interviewed him in the video room.
So you overheard Special Agent 91's interview of the defendant?
I did.
You didn't interview him?
I did not interview him one-on-one, no.
Okay. What conversation did you overhear? What did you overhear the defendant say to Special Agent 91?
As I was entering the jail area again, through the video, from the female hallway, which is basically adjacent to where you walk in, through the video room, which is directly adjacent to this room, into the booking room, I heard the ending portion of Special Agent 91's interview with Mr. Nix. And I was coming in to see if they needed assistance before they brought Mr. Nix back into that booking room, sitting just about where he is sitting currently.
And what did you hear the defendant say?
When he came in, we made some conversation about the jail and back in those days, and then he made the comments of he's willing to accept responsibility for anything that was in that vehicle and anything that we had to do with that day, telling me that everything was on the passenger side.
No further questions.
Cross?
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, let's start with Mr. Nix's voice. You last had regular contact with Mr. Nix in 2020, yes? Or sorry, excuse me, 2004, 20 years ago.
Regular contact, correct.
Okay. And that was the last time you had regular contact with him, correct?
Regular contact, yes.
Right. You would agree with me that Mr. Nix's voice is not particularly high-pitched, is it?
No, it's not.
And it's not low, is it?
It's not, no.
Okay. It's an average male voice, yes?
Average tone.
Yeah, there's nothing to distinguish it as far as the actual level of his voice, so to speak. It's not high, it's not low, it's average.
Tone, correct.
Okay. Now, as far as identifying Mr. Nix's voice, you were not asked to do that till right before this trial, is that correct?
Correct.
There's nothing in your report whatsoever that talks about, I knew his voice
Correct.
back in 2022.
Correct.
Okay. Would you agree with me that 1A, the audio call to the defendant, 1, you were not there when that happened?
Correct.
Number 2, the number that was called, allegedly, was provided to you by a third party, correct?
Yes.
Okay. You have no direct personal information of what number Tom called?
Correct.
Okay. I'm going to play 1A quickly, Your Honor.
2022, time now is 12:14 hours.
Would you agree with me that there's a lot of reverb in that?
Yes.
Big time echo?
Yes.
Okay. You've obviously had conversations with SA 91 before, correct?
Yes.
That doesn't sound like SA 91's voice sounds when you talk to him in person, does it?
No.
Sounds more nasal
Yes. Good way to describe it.
and echoey.
Say that again.
And echoey.
Yes.
So it sounds higher pitched, nasally, and echoey.
Correct.
All right.
SA 91, Detective Monk, CI 1365. Phone is going to be a code call to Dre, phone number 440-241-3338, to discuss the purchase of $100 of crack cocaine for controlled by number 1 in East Lake, Lee County.
Okay.
No, what's up? No, what's up?
All right. That was about 3 seconds, right?
Yes. 20. Yes. 3-4 seconds.
What is?
The most recent voice
Yes.
to Mr. Andrew Nix.
Okay. At 32, would that sound right?
Sure.
Okay. speaking between 35 and 36?
Yes?
Okay. We'll be generous and say that Mr. Nick started, or the person you're saying is Mr. Nick started speaking at 35, at 39, which is where we are now. We're back to whoever's on the other end of the phone call, right?
Correct?
So that's 4 seconds, right?
Okay.
Seconds, right?
Okay, yep.
At most, Mr. Nick spoke for seconds.
Fair, that's fair.
Okay. There's a question of context here, and this is what I'm going to ask you. You've done search warrants before, right?
Yes?
And when you do a search warrant, you swear an affidavit out to a court of law, right?
Yes?
Okay. You've got those 11 seconds without any past context. Would you be comfortable swearing to a judge that I know the voice on the other end of that line is Andrew Nix, based on those 11 seconds without knowing what you already know?
I mean, I'm not sure what you're asking.
Yeah, I
What-
kind of lost that too at the last point.
Wait, let me, ask that again, because I'm not sure what you're,
Fair enough, Your Honor, I'll try to rephrase. Okay, we have 11 seconds of audio that you've testified that you can identify based on those 11 seconds, it's Andrew Nix. Okay. If you were given that audio without knowing that Mr. Nix was arrested, just call it a wiretap, that was the 11 seconds you had on a wiretap, and you were going to ask a judge for a search warrant, would you feel comfortable swearing under oath that you know, based on those 11 seconds alone, that it is Andrew Nix's voice, and ask a judge to issue a warrant based on that?
And just to clarify, I know no other information about this other than just hearing that voice?
Just that voice.
No, I would not feel comfortable.
And in your professional experience, did judges grant warrants based on 11 seconds of audio of someone you'd spoken to regularly 20 years ago?
Could you ask that again, please?
Okay. Based on your experience in issuing warrants and asking judges to, or preparing warrant requests and asking judges to issue them, would you expect a judge to issue a warrant based on a audio and your positive identification of someone you last spoke to regularly 20 years ago?
Objection, Your Honor.
sustained.
To be clear, Mr. Nix said, "I will take responsibility for whatever's in the car," correct?
Correct.
He didn't say, "It's mine." He said, "I'm responsible for it. I'll take responsibility."
In the video, I know it was worded, and I don't want to misquote it without hearing it. There was more than just, "I'll take responsibility for it." Whatever happened, or however he said it, but he said something to the effect of, "Anything that happened today is mine," which led me to assume, if I can answer, that he was taking responsibility for the entire event of the day. Anything that happened, if we could play that clip, there was more. It wasn't just only a, "I'll take responsibility for what's in the car."
Okay. The entire interview from the video room was not preserved, correct?
From the video room, correct.
All right, okay. What's the video room? Is the video room the booking room, or is it a different room than the booking room? Somebody enlighten me.
Your Honor, the video room sits directly next to the booking room. It's
Okay.
a small room.
It's got its own camera.
It's got its own camera.
Okay, go ahead.
So there was an entire discussion between my client, correct?
Correct.
You observed that discussion, correct?
Portion of it, yes.
Portion of it. The purpose of having that discussion in the video room was to preserve the statements of both SA 91 and my client, correct?
Reasonable, yes.
Okay, those were not preserved.
I couldn't answer. I don't know if they had a recording device or anything else, but
Well,
they weren't preserved by the video in that room.
that's, and I should have been more clear. That video is supposed to save and then be available for everybody, correct?
Correct.
It's not.
I don't believe so.
Do you know what happened to that video?
I do not.
The only reason you've ever had the phone number for a gentleman named Tom Sutton was because he gave it to you, correct?
Aside from what I had access to in our police files? So I guess,
What I'm asking you is you testified in April of 2022 that you learned Mr. Sutton's phone number.
yes,
You learned that because he told you, correct?
he gave me the phone number.
And that phone number that you called from your phone, that was provided by a third party, correct?
You're speaking of the video with the flip phone and the, yes, correct.
Yeah, you actually, someone gave you a number and you dialed that number in
Correct,
to see where it would bring.
yes.
Okay. To your knowledge, neither you nor anybody else did a sweep or search of Mr. Sutton's residence on June 17th, 2022, correct?
The day of the,
The day we're talking about, yes.
correct. I have no knowledge that anybody did.
Were you aware that Mr. Sutton was left unattended in his residence after he left Eastlake Police Department?
I was not.
Okay. You've been working narcotics for about 15 years, give or take? At least,
It was a little short, yes, a little less than that.
okay. Proper procedure is to ensure that once the CI has been frisked to determine there's no contraband on him, is to make sure he does not leave your observation, correct?
Typically in most situations, correct?
Mr. Sutton was well known to be a habitual crack user, yes?
I don't know how often he used crack. I know he did.
Okay.
If you want me to
The,
guess, I
the
would,
search warrant that you executed was back in April, correct?
correct,
And that's what led to him working for you?
correct.
Okay. Between April and June 17th, to your knowledge, no one checked to see if there's any other crack cocaine in that house, did they?
Correct.
And in April, crack cocaine was found in that house that belonged to Mr. Sutton.
Yes. During search warrants, which are, yes.
Okay. You testified that you pulled out at Reeves and took a left onto Lakeshore and was trailing my client, correct?
No, sir. I drove across Lake Shore into the yacht club because I knew it was going to be a right-hand turn if he was going to go by me or straight through on Reeves Road. I knew that the right-hand turn would be easier to make than going across traffic on a red light.
You started on the south side of Lakeshore, moved across the street.
Yes, sir.
Then your testimony is that you picked up my client's tail, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Not directly behind him, though. There was a car separating us.
Okay, so car that you believe to be the target car, unrelated car, your car. 1, 2, 3.
Correct.
Okay. You said that you got caught at a traffic light at Route 91, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, when did you see Sergeant Frank pull into a tail position? He would have to have pulled in front of you, correct?
From the police station, correct.
Okay.
He pulled out from the police station, but he was ahead of me.
All right, so I'm going to ask one more question, and then we'll go to the order. When did you observe, in relation to don't want to demote him, Sergeant Frank, Officer Eden, pull in?
Officer Eden was farther Erie Road, pulled out of, there's a, we would call it like a small store on the south, that would be the southeast corner of Erie Road. I can't recall if he pulled out of that southeast corner lot or if he did a U-turn. There's a street just east of that. I can't recall if he did a U-turn or he pulled out of that lot, but it was around that area where he got behind the vehicle.
Okay. So when Officer Eden joined the tail at Erie Road,
He was, I believe, the first one to get, unless you're speaking of me as well.
well, I'm just trying to get an idea where the cars are.
Sure.
Target car? Is Officer Eden, is there any cars between him and the target car?
No, he would be the next one in line.
Next one in line. Then
The
car was-
unknown that I believe, and I can't say to a degree of great certainty, but I believe it was a special agent vehicle. I don't know his special agent number.
Okay, so special agent vehicle, and then you?
I believe just by the way the radio traffic was coming over, and then me, yes.
Okay. And then did Sergeant Frank pull in front of or behind of Detective Eden?
I can't recall. I don't know because as we were pulling up and the lights are turning, I didn't want to activate my lights on my undercover vehicle, so I stopped at the red light. So I'm not sure if Officer Eden or Sergeant Frank were in front of each other. I don't know who, I can't say with certainty who was in front of who.
Okay. Here, no one had identified the license plate on that car before it was stopped.
Correct.
No one called over the radio with the license plate number.
I don't recall if anyone called it over once they were closer, but I know that we didn't initially know what the plate was.
Okay, so the plate was unknown. All right, so you identified it as a beige Toyota, correct?
Yes?
Okay, and what would you identify as the source of the information that it was a beige Toyota? Where did you receive that information?
From one of the special agents, letting me know that the purchase was completed and it was heading westbound on Lakeshore.
Was that SA 91?
I can't say with certainty that it was SA 91. I know that there was some traffic being given at that time about who's where and which way the car is going to go and alternate routes that it could take, such as Reeves Road.
Okay. All right, so in your report, do you recall stating that it was a gold-colored Toyota, not beige?
If it's in the report, yes, I could.
Okay. All right. So Eden, Fawcett, and Frank were all there before you pulled in, correct?
Eden, Fawcett, and Frank, yes, were with the vehicle. As I circled around and came, yes, you're correct.
Okay. Did both Eden and Detective Frank make the traffic light that you got held up at?
I would believe so because I believe I was the only one that stopped at that light, knowing that the car was going to continue to be followed regardless of where it went. So I believe they both made that light.
Okay. And you testified that the doors were already open and the search was already underway by the time you arrived, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And the reason given for the search was Officer Eden's canine alerted?
Matt Neath, Officer Neath's, he's a Willoughby officer. I don't know what I'm not sure what reasoning they gave anybody about what the search was going. As I pulled in and waited, I saw the search being conducted. I don't know what was given to anyone as a reason. I sat in my car. I was in a unmarked black SUV.
All right. Do you recall testifying a little earlier today that Officer Eden is a canine officer?
I don't recall that.
Do you recall saying you saw Officer Eden's canine dog on the scene?
I do not.
Objection, Your Honor.
He doesn't recall it. I don't recall it either, but it doesn't really matter. It's in the record, one way or another.
All right. To be clear, in prior investigations of trafficking on Lakeshore Boulevard, which you were involved in, the two target vehicles were a big Honda van and a black Navigator, correct?
You're referring to the search warrant and what we're
I'm
looking for?
referring to the investigation in the month and a half, 2 months before that of heavy trafficking around Lakeshore Boulevard in that area.
Objection.
Sustained.
All right. The flock camera photos that you referenced in your report, those were collected after the fact, right?
Yes.
So there was no flock camera that you didn't,
A current photo is what you're going to...
there was no current photo of them pulling up that you already identified that they're on the way in, that's our target. It was all after the fact.
Correct.
Do you know where Patrolman Neath, was stationed?
I do not.
You testified that Frank, Eden, and Fawcett were there when you arrived, correct? You
Yes.
did, but you did not identify Officer Neath as having been there at that time, correct?
Correct. I don't pull in or how we got there.
Okay. So, just quick summarize. You don't know what the contents, you didn't know what the contents of the call were at that time when it was made, if there was whatever controlled call may have been made?
Okay.
Weren't there for that? You did not observe any alleged transaction?
I did not.
Somebody mentioned a gold or beige, or I believe pewter was brought up at one point, colored vehicle, yes?
Toyota?
Toyota. And then you drove up and saw them, that they were already searching?
When I pulled up, yes, at this traffic stop, yes.
No more questions, John?
Redirect?
When you're assisting other police agencies, do you ever share information with each other?
Yes,
Do you share phone numbers with each other?
often.
Over the course of a year, if you could, how many phone numbers would you estimate you write down in different police reports?
Objection? I don't see what the relevance is. He's already testified that he was given the number by Mr. Sutton. It's either hearsay or it's not. I don't know.
Well, it may or may not be, okay, but what's your response, Mr. Hurd?
Your Honor, it goes to the reasonableness of him not remembering perfectly a number that was given him in April, since he's given some.
Sustained.
On the day of the controlled buy, what was your role with Thomas Sutton?
To conduct a controlled purchase of any narcotic with the Lake County Narcotics Agency for him and his benefit to not file charges against him that were during the search warrant.
Were you the officer primarily responsible for him and his location?
I was not.
Were you tasked with obtaining the drugs after the sale from Mr. Sutton?
I was not.
On the date when you were following the gold Toyota, how much did the traffic light delay you by, would you estimate?
Tough to tell. I think they're normally about a minute, so I don't know what portion I caught, but probably most of that minute.
And approximately how much time would you estimate passed between you hearing over the radio that the controlled buy occurred and then the traffic stop occurring?
From the time the control purchase and the traffic stop, I'll estimate 3 to 5 minutes. I'm assuming that's a travel from McDonald's to where it's about 2 miles. Yeah, I'm gonna estimate somewhere in 3 to 5 minutes.
No further questions.
Any recross?
Lake Shore's busier at lunchtime, isn't it?
Varies.
Well, you've got Circle K.
Thursday, Fridays are normally the busiest.
But in general, it's 91 at 10 o'clock in the morning. It takes you longer, generally at noon, to get from the same point A to the same point B.
It varies.
And your estimation on time is, it is just that, it's a guess.
Yes, it is, I guess.
Okay. And with regards to what times things happened, the actual times aren't indicated in the report, and actually the time of the report, it's got a date on there, but the time's 000000, correct?
That's something Records commonly does. I couldn't explain why.
So, for whatever reason, when police reports are prepared, we never get a time of when things started, stopped, or when they happened.
The only thing that would be added to that would be a CAD screen. There's a CAD log is done by the dispatchers, so I don't know if they had that, but that would be the only time that they would actually come in for specific things. I know they do it for large incidents, however, headed by the narcotics agency, so I don't know, it was something that we wanted to keep on the common band for the police department.
Understood. So, unless I did the times of the starts and stops, there would be no record of what time it actually occurred.
Correct.
No more questions, Your Honor.
All right, you may step down, take a 10-minute break.